This one here. Yeah.
That's you, eh?
Yeah. Talking.
You put it up.
Put the music down.
Yeah, music.
Ghost writer daily mi uhang na Holy Ghost writer ni hard kukusikia juu daily una recycle verse second to God akona goro sijaitambua kopa second coming pia inakuja God ata rain proper si walikata kumjua wakidai yesi king wakavisha hawa marapa wana kingdom keys wanadai niko na kismat yo ni kingdom win life in a pressure mziki ni pressure imani ni pressure family pressure see hesitate najengwa na pressure life in a pressure
we are.
Thank you for a lovely evening. I really enjoyed myself.
I really enjoyed myself too.
Yeah, love bila regrets. See ya latex. See when he oops, imesababisha ndoa. Difficult for a young person kutaboa. That's undeniably true, cause sobriety is hard to maintain in society today, but see impossible. Thanks Lord, you wash my mistakes away. Na kila siku nina fight na effects. I have strong urges, that's one consequence of my sin. Which brings me to the purpose of this conversation. Nasaka strength ya kufight easy temptation. Nasaka strength ya kutia zi, ya kushikilia purity hata kama sijiski. Na sina otherwise, nope, sina budi. Nikki Slicky, easy feelings inarudi. Nope, si juhudi, it's all by grace. I need you to finish this race. I don't wanna start something I later on regret. Cause I got nothing on my ring finger. Yeah, I got nothing on my ring finger. I don't wanna start something I later on.
You should go inside. It's getting cold. Have a good night.
Hey, would you like to come in and see the yearbook I was telling you about?
So I got nothing on my ring finger, nothing on my ring finger, nothing on my ring finger. Every day the cravings get stronger. I have to die daily, so I can't afford to linger. Many times I wanna sell my birthright just to get some, like Jacob's twin. I was born in sin, my mind twisted, though I'm still a verb. Like the airline, walls broken down. I need you to repair mine. Messed up so many times, crossed so many lines. Lord, for sure your forgiveness is divine. Umenipa nafasi kubadili mwenendo. Gono kabla pete ni last. Si upendo, tendo. Hili ni disaster recipe. A cheap thrill at the expense of destiny. Devil using curiosity to get the best of me. Life in the flesh is the death of me. I don't wanna start something I later on regret. Cause I got nothing on my ring finger. Yeah, I got nothing on my ring finger. I don't wanna start something I later on regret. Cause I got nothing on my ring finger, nothing on my ring finger, nothing on my ring finger. Yo, could I be afraid of a premature conception or an infection from weak contraception? Or only holding out for earthly love and affection? Or is the cry of my heart to be a reflection? Cause all these other reasons I can explain away. We're careful, we're safe, I know she really loves me. Hey, all of these we can debate, but the cross, that's the real reason I should wait. Nishikilia, I'm in need of your power. Can't put all of my hope in a cold shower. Mola wangu, help me stay true till the ring on my finger when I do. I don't wanna
I'm sorry,
start something I later
I really need to go.
Cause I got nothing on my ring finger. Yeah, I got nothing on my ring finger. I don't wanna start something I later on regret. Cause I got nothing on my ring finger, nothing on my ring finger, nothing on my ring finger. I don't wanna start something I later on regret. Cause I got nothing on my ring finger. Yeah, I got nothing on my ring finger. I don't wanna start something I later on regret. Cause I got nothing on my ring finger, nothing on my ring finger, nothing on my ring finger. Cause I got nothing on my ring finger, nothing on my ring finger, nothing on my ring finger. Got nothing on my ring finger. Nothing on my ring finger, nothing on my ring finger, nothing on my ring finger. Yeah. Devil whispers at me, says I won't make it at all. That if I stand publicly, I set myself to fall. But then I hear your voice commanding me to be brave. Your saving grace more than enough for me to behave. To be saved is to be subject to your will. So my neighbor's wife I shouldn't covet. What the world dishes out, no I shouldn't love it. Naked body parts, no I shouldn't think of it. Even if I fall doesn't make it untrue. Even when I'm faithless, you remain faithful. Life in abundance, so I'm forever grateful. When I get married, you want it to be sweet. Real, my Goliath in the story. If I overcome, Lord, you get the glory. Giving me the chance
got nothing on my ring finger, nothing on my ring finger, nothing on my ring finger.
Box house, you know we in this, right? I got my homies up in it. Jimmy G. Turn up.
God, moment, low, me less. E.g. Devil alitem tukasema la. Ati disobey ukasema la. Dakika kadhaa badala kuhepa ukapata huwezi kataa. Why you hanging with the devil ukimwona toka mbio, huh? Ama utajipata una hang na magenga nuna bang na makushung peng na mademu na wabang. Why you wanna be dead? Temptation ikikuja bana toka mbio toka tara.
Wacha kurandaranda toka kijiko ngata. Utika hapo basi wewe utakipata pata. Yesu akuita bana temptation kata ukizubasa na misi utajipata pata. God kusema so. Follow the leader, acha kukoso. Kristo bila kasoro. Pikachu mtoka kijiko.
Majaribu yakija kama Yusufu nitang'ata.
Tuze kijiko.
Nitang'ata nipe nguvu majaribu nazo niweze kung'ata.
Tuze kijiko. Napiga chuo. Nada. Toka kijiko piga 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 chuo. Iko nini? Nada. Toka kijiko piga chuo. Nada. Toka kijiko. Kuna vita ndani yangu between flesh black zote ndani yangu. Devo inje yangu. Nimesema nitashinda vita ndani yangu. Nazidi kabana. Hakuna cha Misri naenda Kanaan. Imani neema najua nitaweza. Liwe liwalo ni shafi cha white.
Dhambi ikikuja Buda ng'ada. Hakuna idhaa kubangaiza. Buda ng'ada. Ita Bwana. Shetani kana. Na Yesu Bwana. Mshindi sana. Ibu yakija kama Yusufu nitang'ada.
Tuze kijiko.
Nitang'ada nipe nguvu majaribu nazo niweze kung'ada.
Tuze kijiko. Napiga chuo. Nada. Toka kijiko piga 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 chuo. Iko nini? Nada. Toka kijiko piga chuo. Nada. Toka kijiko.
Uliyedhani umesimama. Karada usidunde. Delaila na kusaka. Akunyoe akumadisie.
Dhambi ikikuja Buda ng'ada. Hakuna idhaa kubangaiza. Buda ng'ada. Dhambi ikikuja Buda ng'ada. Hakuna idhaa kubangaiza. Buda ng'ada.
Never switch lanes, no, don't that. My click, my squad all in it. Bust 5 in it. Turn up, joint all in it. Yeah, Roman sweat on me and body life. Discipline, faith, body life. Bombi, Manolo, Juma, church, boy, body life. Tusepe, ukweli nipate kisande kanisha na piga dashiki. Ukweli wa genge wa bongo wa raga. Niko mbioni na nyia mnishiki. Ni Mungu, ni huu. Ni ite nyashinski kwa dhiki faraja. Nipande, nishuke. Maisha naishi na mimi siishi. Tusepe.
Wanashangazwa na nguzo. Getting higher education to teach others. High five. Waza mafunzo wanachanganywa na tuzo. Tafsiri siri hii wadig deeper juu tunakaza mafumbo kasi feel na kaza uso bidii wakikaza makumbo buda church na jiwe na leta mass design ya Pluto nina Yesu nambari uno nipe tano kutamba ni mno dire na kedo na giuga nina Yesu juu na floki mto yeah. Yes somebody like, 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 yes somebody, yes somebody like, yes somebody, yes somebody like, yes somebody, yes somebody like, high five chini ya hiyo high five. Jump, come aside, put your feet to the sky. Move to the side, slide and slide. Bastinazo, moja mbili hadi tano. Hey, dunga kasi ndano, shetani kakando. Kando digota gado. Hey, motio keto shoki ya gado. Dena diri, ikue diri, koso kena dayo. Ogeni edio, deja so tu joy. Hang in effect, figure hotter, the male coca. Touch boy with the mic, double low with the track. Sissy how. Yes somebody like, 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 yes somebody, yes somebody like, yes somebody, yes somebody like, yes somebody, yes somebody like, high five chini ya hiyo high five.
Manolo, in a swally. Hold up. Can I be an MC for I rock the stage? Hands up. Yeah, put him up. Sing, I'm on my verse. 5. 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 Woo. 5 to the east, 5 to the west. Everybody in the place, you're not rocking with the best. That Jesus flow, healers flow. You know I'm a believer flow. Next time kuja gig na vest. Usibebe sweater. Wacha tupige hesabu yaki wa alpha. Sisi ni better. Woo.
Shining, where my girls at? Yo, I'm about that life and I keep it coming with the flows. Let my light shine bright. What he put in me, I'ma make the whole world know. He's the one who gave me life. See, I'm all about my Lord. Jesus loves me, this I know. Yo, I'm on my verse 5. I cool, not kid to wears any show. Yo, it's not by works, it's not by deeds, it's by your grace. No, not succeeding. Every day you keep blessing me. I took out this world keeps testing me. I'm holding on to faith. All I know is that you make a way. And I know that you got me, yes, you got me in your arms. I know that I'll be safe.
Yes somebody like, 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 yes somebody, yes somebody like, yes somebody, yes somebody like, yes somebody, yes somebody like, chini ya hiyo high five.
Yo, you're listening to The Vault on Icon Radio. Keep it locked. Your number one entertainment plug. You hear?
Yeah. Today you are back with me. In case you forgot, it's the Beatmaker, not the Beat Taker. 10 fingers in the air. And if you don't know, you better ask your mama or ask Akinyi with a good hair. Now, a lot of people have been asking me where I disappeared to. I've been around. Thanks for all the shout outs and everything that people have been inquiring about. You know, we're here doing our thing here on The Vault today. You know, Kenyan hip hop to the world. That's what we're talking about. And today, one of the interesting things that we're talking about is about gospel music. Now, I feel I'm well versed to talk about gospel music because that's my background. You know, we're going to be one of the people who set up gospel music, at least modern gospel music, hip hop music in our country, this country of ours of Kenya. But the question has been asked of late a lot. Like, yo, is this music the guys are doing, is it even relevant in 2026? You know, is it about ministry? Is it about God? Or is it just about making that almighty Kenya shilling, that coin? that will go into your pocket. Now, today I'm going to give you some facts about Kenyan hip hop, gospel hip hop, that is, But some of the artists that we play today, maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't, but I had to put them on blast today. We played About That Life featuring Verse 5, which was quite an interesting track if you ask me. We also played a bit of some old classes, some OGs back in the day, but are still known as new school. That was DJ Sadiq, the song was called Bado Nazidi, yeah? I don't know what you guys felt about that track, but you can let me know what you feel about it. Some artists on it were like Mohanji, Holy Dave, Silva, yeah, Mr. Rich, some of these guys, man, I'm hearing about them now. Then we also played Echo Dida. He did a record called Amen. Everyone likes to hear that word Amen. Well, he put it on a record, so the record's called Amen. Then, of course, we also played Lily White. She had this track called Grounded. Now, one thing about Lily White, she's out there representing, for all the female MCs out there. In fact, at one point, she linked the Beatmekah up with this artist who's become big in the Kenyan music industry, but not gospel. That's Tulia. So shout out to Lily White, and everything that she's doing, We also played Masterpiece, Apart from that, we played Pressure, and then finally played Riga, Ring Finger, Well, I have too many ring fingers on, too many rings on mine. But yeah, we're playing Ring Finger. So one of the things that we're talking about today is gospel hip hop still relevant? Like in 2026, does it even make sense? And a lot of times today I said let me play some of the new school guys who have come out. What we call new school, because when some of us guys were rapping back in the 90s, some of them were not even born. And so we're a different kind of breed of music that we're doing. But at the same time, there's been a topic that's come up of late, and it's been coming up a lot. I'm hearing it everywhere I go. And that topic is, are guys really doing music for God? Or do they have other ambitions why they're doing it? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, like, how the music is being done. So a lot of guys are like, yo, this gospel hip hop music, it doesn't really exist, And some guys feel the new artists who are coming up are more about making that coin, And I'm going to talk about that today. They're more about making that coin than doing it for God. They're like, and I won't lie, I've encountered a few artists, and when I ask them, we're doing gospel hip hop, and I ask them, yo, why are you doing this music? And some of their answers can be shocking, by the way. Let me just put it right there, like, yo, let me roll my eyes from left to right, because some of their answers can be shocking. There's one that I talked to, and he said, hey, unajua gospel iko na do. That was the answer. Imagine. It had nothing to do with reaching out souls for God. In our time, what happened was, gospel hip hop. Let me take you back so you understand in Kenya how gospel hip hop was working back in the days. So, when I was younger in my youth, like when I talk about my youth, like I started representing on the mic like when I was like 13, 14 years old. So one day I go for this function, I go for this function that happened in the area that we lived in Langata. So I go for this function. And it was like what they call a praise and worship prayer meeting. So I go there, and I'm checking it out. And I was like, after the function, after, can't really call it a function, but after the prayer meeting, and it was at someone's house in Langata. So after going there, this guy with all this energy comes to me. And he says, yo, what's your name? I say, hey, that time I'm like about 15 years old. He's like, yo, my name is Jimmy. So he's like, what do you do? And those days, man, I won't lie, I was really cocky. So I say, yo, I'm a rapper. That's what I said. Then he says, what? You're a rapper? I'm also a rapper. So he runs upstairs in his house and comes up with this big hard book, exercise book. I remember, those exercise books were black and on the side was red. He had one of those, and he's just like, yo, we should form a group, me and you. Imagine within 10 minutes, he's telling me and him should form a group. And I was like, okay, yeah, maybe we should, because I was doing my own thing. He was doing his own thing. Now, let me shock you in case you want to know who that guy was. So that guy became one of the biggest people in the entertainment business in Kenya. That was the late Big Kev Ombajo of True Black Entertainment. And me and him, we kicked it. We're like, yo, from tomorrow, we're meeting up. We're forming our group together. So I said, I had a friend of mine that I went in high school with. I was just like, let me bring in him. He was called Gramodeño. We're like, let me bring in Gray so we can at least be the three of us. So Graham comes in also, so we form a group, and it's called CBN. Yes, not like the TV show. It was called Christians by Nature. That was the name of our group, and from that day we were rocking. Now, those days in Kenya, it was very expensive to go into the studio and actually have a producer build a track for you. And to be honest, a lot of the production wasn't great. It wasn't great. You have to remember, hip hop was still coming up. It hadn't reached the level it is right now. And so we decided we're gonna be rapping, but we called it rap cappella. You're rapping and you're singing a cappella. So we'd go everywhere. We go everywhere and perform, and at different places we meet different people. So along the way, when we're representing, now I'm the kind of person that if I get into a place, I want to get to know you. I want to know who the heck you are, who's in front of me. So I go to this place. I remember it was in Buruburu. I'm at this church. I think the church is called East. Then I meet this other guy who does music similar to us, which is rap cappella. And they're in a group of 3 guys, I remember. And they got on the mic, they did their thing where if you understand the way a cappella and rap was working, it's one guy is rapping, or when it gets to your part, you rap. The other time, the other guys in the background humming ooh, that's what they're doing. That's what rap a cappella was. So I go to talk to this guy after I've seen him do his thing, and in case the people out there, I'm trying to explain to you where hip-hop came from in Kenya, when we came into it. So I meet this guy, and he's with his group. Now, this guy also became a big player in the Kenyan music industry. This was Big Ted Kwaka, as we call him, Mr. Thomas Kwaka. Yeah, that was him. And along the way, I kept on meeting other artists, So all of us, we're trying to do the same thing, but we're trying to figure out where to go. So I said, hold on. Let me come up with an idea, I said, I'm going to form a group where people come together, artists come together, and every month we'll just be doing shows. We'll be putting together shows. And so we met up and we formed a group that guys classify in Kenya. They say that we're the OGs of gospel hip hop. That was a group we called ourselves the Rap Community, And so we're 7 of us in a group, people exaggerate and give our story out there. And you guys who have been talking about our story, you need to get it right from the source and from the sources, not from people who used to hang around us. But we were called the Rap Community. And what happened was, at that time in Kenya, we said, okay, we're going to just be doing shows. And we're all in different groups. There was CBN, there was Ted's group called Clip, there was another group called Basic. That was Joe Kuria and Johnny. That's brothers and sisters in Christ. There was another guy called SOG, Brian Lusambili. One of the first gospel rap ladies in Kenya was a lady called MCLC. She was part of our crew also. Later on, you see her in life on tracks with Giuliani, because they used to do a lot of stuff and they used to hang out a lot together, So she became one of the dominant people in gospel music, over there. So we had a whole crew of guys that were in our crew. We were 7 of us, they were in our crew, and we decided, hey, we're gonna go out there and represent for God. we're going to go and do ministry. It was all about ministry. It wasn't about, because really, if you look about it, in 1995, 96, 97, there was no money that was being made in gospel. In fact, people did it because they loved God. That's why they did it. Now in 2026, we're going to get to that, but that's a different story, about how people think. And if you feel I'm lying, give me a shout out, speak your mind. But this is my time. This is the beat maker's time. So I'm giving my story. So, and there are people who are aligned to us also. They were aligned to what we were doing, and they liked what we were doing, and they jumped on board. One of the guys who jumped on board, who was way ahead of us in music at that time, was Pete Odera. Pete Odera had his group Heart Ministries. That was basically Esther, Seluyugi, the big man who became one of the biggest producers in Kenya, Ted Josiah, and of course Pete was there, So it's like we got a lot of lessons learned from them about what it was. But even with them, it was all about like doing this for the ministry. Like I said, there was really no money to be made, at the end of the day. And even if money came through, you'd go perform in a show, and people were like, oh, you know what? Because we see that you're struggling and you're trying to do this thing, and we want you to get home. They take what's called a love offering, and that love offering was just get back to your house. So we never looked at it. We always looked at it from the point of view of how many people are going to come to God through music. That's how it was. But I'll tell you the other side of the story. Hip-hop that time was rising up in Kenya. Rap music was coming up in Kenya. Then here comes a crew and saying, hey, we're doing gospel hip-hop. That was unheard of. People are like, what the heck? Did they say they're doing gospel rap? So there's two art forms. If you try to say that you're doing gospel in Kenya at that time, the people shunned you. Like, they totally shunned you. One of them was, of course, was rap music. The other was if you're doing dancehall music, gospel dancehall, and they're like literally like no dancehall artists at that time they were doing gospel that I remember even in Kenya, But it's like everywhere we used to go, people look at us now and where we've come from, and they say that, we created the way, we paved the way for artists to do their thing. But the honest truth was, if I'm being honest, and I'd be honest here on the Vault on Icon Radio, we were not liked by a lot of people. We were actually hated. And this, we're talking about people in the Christian community. We're not talking about secular community. We're talking about the Christian community. We were hated because they felt like, we're just trying to lie to people. We're just trying to swindle people, or we're just trying to get some girls. That's the way they looked at it. They looked at we were just hoaxes, But that wasn't the case. Over time, I'm surprised, because over time now they say that we were legends and we did a great thing. The same people used to shun us, and that's just basically how the music industry is in Kenya. But as I went along today and I said, hey, I have to do this topic about gospel music in Kenya, I was really disappointed. The first thing I did was I went online to see what they feel about Kenyan gospel hip-hop. First of all, online they say, basically they say hip-hop, gospel hip-hop is really like a minute form of music in Kenya, And the other thing they say is that the gospel rap got its beginnings from actually secular groups in Kenya like Kala Mashaka. That is one of the big, Google or whatever, you need to check your information. That is totally wrong. First of all, gospel hip hop was even there before you hear about. I know about Kala Mashaka. I know them because when they even recording Tafsiri, I passed through the studio. Ted Josiah is the one who produced them, and I was there. And then you're talking about 98. Now we came out in 95, And that time, gospel hip-hop was actually a form that began to rise. From around 97, it began to rise in Kenya. You hear about guys like who are in a group like for example, Wagana, Sakut. Sakut was one of the first Sheng rappers in Kenya, and he was doing gospel. Another person used to back us up and do music with us and was part of Pete's record label, Jiwe Records, was actually Wahoo. Wahoo was a gospel artist, by the way. People make it look like, I know years later, People know about her through Ogopa DJs and things like that. But before that, she was a gospel artist. And I remember when she decided and said, "Hey, I want to go back and do some gospel music." People said, "Oh, you're going gospel because you failed to make it later on as a secular artist." Hey, Kenya can be harsh. But back to online. So they say that gospel music is a minute kind of music in Kenya, and the people they list that and the short information they have, the list of the artists that have actually made it in gospel music are people like Giuliani, they say Guardian Angel, Bahati and Willie Paul. By the way, both of them, we know what happened to them. They don't do gospel music anymore. Echo Dida, A-Star, Rigga, we played Rigga's tune today, and Proud Refuge. Now, the interesting thing about it is this right now, is when we look at some of these names that came up, let's start with Giuliani. So Giuliani, I already heard about Giuliani when I was about to come back from London. And how I heard about Giuliani, there was this group of guys that I recorded when they were teenagers. This is around 2000, and they call themselves Jahim. Now, this is where the story gets interesting. Jahim were actually a group from a church that I used to attend, also called Kilelesho Community Church. Of course, in Kilelesho. And one of the guys in that group, I wouldn't really classify him as a main rapper, but he ended up getting known a bit in gospel music in Kenya at that time as a solo rapper later on. And that was Emmanuel Jal. Now, when I was over in London, Jal said that he wanted to set up a record label in Kenya. Yeah. And his record label, I think would go after I think it was his grandfather's name. I think it was called Gatwich Records, if I'm not wrong, And one of the artists that came up was Giuliani. Now, Giuliani, of course, originally was in Ukoflani Mam, was still linked to Ukoflani Mamau, So by that time, he was dropping a lot of gospel tunes. So he signed him on to his record label. I'll not get into the whole story about me and Emmanuel Jal because it's not about that. But that story I'll give you on a later day. There's a lot of tidbits that people don't know about, So Giuliani and I think Caroline Atemi were signed to Gatwich, if I'm not wrong. That time Jal was still in London. He was not that far from me. He was, I think, if I'm not wrong, I think it was South London or something, South or West London. That's where he was, But Giuliani later on seemed to have an impact on gospel hip-hop in Kenya. Now, some people may argue, may say, oh, it's because of his roots in Ukoflani Mau Mau from Dandora. The people are like, hey, yeah, he's someone to look at. I don't know. That's a story for another day, But Giuliani is one of the people that I mentioned here. Guardian Angel, we can't really look at Guardian Angel and say, oh, this is straight up hip hop. He's more like, when I look at him, I think more of like some Afro pop thing that he's doing whenever I hear his music, because it's basically Afro gospel, people like Bahati and Willie Paul, their music just like, when I hear it, it sounds a bit confusing sometimes. I know they had some of the gospel records, and then all of a sudden they flipped. They decided gospel ain't for me anymore. And they jumped the gun on the other side. So we know their story. Everyone knows their story. Then there's Echo Dida, right? Echo Dida has been around in gospel for some time now. He's known to drop some good records out there. I've heard some trap records. That's basically what I've heard from him. A-Star, interesting enough, is someone that I met when he was a teenager. Later on, we hear about him through CTA clearing the airwaves, but I actually met him when he was a teenager, because he used to play piano for that group Jal was in, Jahim, on their records. That's how I remember. That's how I remember him actually. I remember him so now, later on, I hear that he goes by the name A-Star and then he's a rapper. Those days, he never used to rap. Never heard him rap. Maybe he used to rap in his bedroom, I don't know, but never heard him rap. So it was quite interesting for me. So the thing that we're talking about today, we're asking ourselves, like, is in 2026, the kind of hip hop that's coming out by these artists, that classify themselves as holy hip hop, gospel hip hop. That's how they classify their names. Are they? And the question has been asked to me several times. Are these guys actually really doing it for ministry? Now, I went back, and what I did was I listened to some of these records that have come out by some of these artists. Some of them have some really good records and everything that have come out. But to be honest, some of them I don't really understand what the heck they're talking about, by the way. I feel it's more a trend thing than a gospel thing. The other day I was talking to another guy, I will not mention his name, but this guy is known to has been in gospel hip hop for a long time. And we were talking about where is gospel hip hop really going. And he mentioned to me that there's some artists out there who are actually doing it for the ministry. They're doing it with the whole of their heart. But he agreed with me that there's some that are questionable with a big Q. Like, are they really in this thing for the right reasons? Like, you rarely hear nowadays about back in the days what used to happen. And today we're going to play some of the music for back in the days, guys who were actually in the movement of gospel hip hop and gospel music, so we can look for the difference. And you judge for yourself what you think. But I remember, like, when I heard some of the music that's coming out, and for me, the thing about me being an artist back in the days, being a music producer, working with artists, different kinds of artists, from all sectors, the first thing I always do is I always listen to, first of all, I don't even really care about the beat. I always listen to what you're saying. And if what you're saying doesn't make sense to me, I'm like, okay. And I feel like some of the gospel hip hop that's coming out right now, I feel like at the end of the day, they're really not going to that extent where they're trying to let people really know, like, a deep view about God. They're not really going to that extent where they actually say, hey, we want to see more souls come to Christ. It's more about the genre of music. Like, if trap is hitting at that time, I'm with trap. If a certain style of hip hop music is hitting, I'm just caught up on that trend. And that trend, by the way, the whole trend thing has screwed up a lot of parts of music, And so I'm asking myself at the end of the day, is it about being cool? Now, some people may be like, oh, this Beatmekah guy, he's being a hater. He's being a hater. How can he come out like that? How can he speak like that? And we're representing out there. Well, once again, like I said, I've had an interaction with a lot of gospel hip hop artists. Some are new school, some are old school. And I would ask them the one question. And the one question I would ask is, who are you doing it for? Now, they say as a gospel artist, if you really want to know what someone is doing it for, now hear me again, if you really want to know why someone is doing something, you got to get to the root of something. The root of why you're doing gospel hip hop or whatever you're doing has come from the Bible. The Bible is the centerpiece of where you're coming from. Now, there's a verse in the Bible, let me quote a verse in the Bible that says, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, he shall reap. So if you're sowing the wrong element of what you say that you're supposed to be doing, it will generally come out, And that's why you see a lot of artists are flipping from gospel to secular. They feel like, and if you ask them why, they'll be like, hey, I can't pay my bills. I'm broke. I have kids. I need to make money somehow. I can't keep on in this life. That's the answer to it. So it makes me ask the question, why were you doing it in the first place? Then there was actually a time in Kenya, believe it or not. And we're not talking about like decades ago. We're talking probably in around 2007, 2008, that era, where you see a lot of secular artists, quite a lot of them, they flipped and became gospel artists. Once again, I asked the question, why are you becoming a gospel artist? And they said, hey, gospel music is hitting right now. You had guys even were coming up later on like Daddy O.N. and putting out their records, and they're like, hey, their music's playing all over radio. It's all over TV. They're making it. It seems like they're making money. So from today, I'm doing gospel. If I'm a rapper, I'm doing gospel rap. But then again, when it looked like gospel wasn't really moving anymore, what did they do? They flipped back and went secular. In fact, I remember the early Willie Paul when he was doing gospel, when he started out doing gospel. And I remember he was all about singing about gospel music, performing, and doing his thing. And then he flipped the other side. Well, Bahati was there for a minute, but those two just didn't seem like they were getting along. For whatever reason it was, I can't remember what it was, but for whatever reason they weren't getting along. Then all of a sudden, Bahati decides he wants to go secular. Ding, ding, ding. What does Willie Paul say? He says, after all the beef there, he says, finally, you've crossed over. And I'm thinking like, okay, so why do people do what they're doing? Why do they do what they're doing? So right now, when we look at gospel hip-hop in 2026, and that's why I played some of those records, the new school guys who have come out, we call them the newbies who have come out, played some of their records, and for you to get a chance to hear what they're talking about. Now, some of them are talking about their own experiences of things that they've encountered in their life. But a lot of people who are not in the gospel, who are not even like in gospel music or anything, they listen to the music and they ask themselves, okay, where and it's funny, but the secular side will ask that question, be like, so where is God in these? Just because you say Jesus that's not good enough. How are you ministering out to people out there? How are you getting them to know more about who God is? For me as an individual, I've always been a Christian. That's just how it's been. From the time I was young, God has always been a big place in my life. I've worked both sides. I've worked with artists on the secular side. I've worked with artists on the gospel side. But even on the secular side, I'm very straight point to what are you putting out. I'm not going to be recording no song that almost sounds like a pornography movie. That's impossible. I'm not going to do that. But at the same point, it's like when I meet artists right now, and a few of them I've met of late, even younger than some of the artists that I've played right now today, and I listen to their music, the same question I ask them, what are you doing it for? And if you're doing it for God, then we've got to see that it's for God. But to be honest, a lot of the artists that I've met have been saying that, why they actually charge, and some of them even charge a lot of money to do their performances. And they say, and their excuse is this. Let me tell you what their excuse is. To me, it's an excuse. But someone else, it may be the real to them. But what they say is, you know what? We use a lot of money going in the studio, having that song produced, having that song mixed, having that song mastered. And they say, hey, shouldn't we also benefit financially because of that, of all the money that we have spent? And I'm just thinking like, So my question to a few of them was, what if Jesus was around right now on the earth, right now as we speak, right? And he went and gave a sermon, as some of the pastors do. He gave a sermon and said, hey, for this week, I'm going to be charging you this much. If Jesus said, I'm coming to Uhuru Park or Jivanji to give a sermon, at the end of the day, I want to see 100 large in my pocket. How would you react? So some people be like, what I've just said is being judgmental. But that's what the point. It said, why did you get into what you got into? What is it for? Now, a lot of these artists that are out there doing gospel hip-hop right now, they're extremely talented. No one can take that away from them. When you hear them flow, you're like, okay, yeah, this guy has something. But some of them have something that they're saying, and you're like, it challenges your life, and you're like, this is something that more I like to listen to, And so we've got to ask ourselves that question. And I want to hear your view about it as we go through it. I want to hear your view about it. Like, what do you feel? Do you feel in 2026 gospel hip-hop, gospel rap is relevant in the Kenya that we live in? Do you really feel that when you hear that music, it's touching you? Or do you feel people are just out for a payday? Now, I have two views about it, My view is, yes, there are people out there who are out for it genuinely, and you can hear it in what they're talking about, and you can see it in their lives. Us growing up in gospel music, they said one thing: music can't just be about you singing. It can't just be about you rapping. you have to live that life. You have to live that testimony. You know, in secular music, it's a bit different. When you hear like rock music and someone talking about the drug they like taking back in the day, like angel dust, like cocaine, and you see them they really live that life. They really do take that nonsense and put it in their veins, you know. So, but in gospel music, someone saying, hey, I live for God, but then you see the other way of the living, you're like, nah, this guy, there's no way. And then they say that you're being judgmental. You're not being judgmental. You're just giving your fact of opinion. I feel that at the end of the day, and I'm gonna give my view, my total view about it, but I feel the gospel hip hop still needs to wake up. Wake up and change the way things are done, you know? And because right now, the way it looks like, hey, it's just a fad, it's just a fashion that you're trying to get yourself into, you know? And Kenya, we're stuck, whether it's gospel music or whether it's secular music. Kenya artists are so caught up with trends. If a style comes right now abroad and they're doing it, I'm gonna get caught up on it. Like I remember there was a time in Kenya, and it's still there right now, hasn't disappeared. But there was a time in Kenya where like drill was the format. Like everyone's like, and they're not talking about any type of drill they're doing. When Kenyans are talking about, and the rappers are doing this drill, they're talking specifically about the UK drill. Now I know about that whole scene because of course I lived over there, and UK is just another version of grime, you know, that came out. Grime was there way before, but UK, it's like, and one thing about UK have never been really like around the world. They never looked at them as serious like rappers, to be honest. They looked at them more like rock artists, pop music. That was their thing. So by the time you get to UK drill, then finally they're like, okay, so these guys have a voice. They have something that they're saying that's unique and everything. Then Kenyans, what they do is they jump on it. Whether it's the gospel music or the secular music, they jump on it. They're like, okay, now I'm a drill artist. So we're so caught up on trends, you know. We're so caught up on just the swag way of doing things, but you forget about the message. And that's why I'm asking, gospel artists, I'm going to check you out there and ask you, who are you doing it for? Is it for yourself? Is it for a payday? What exactly is it for? Like, if you say you're going to represent for God, then represent for God all the way. If you're trying out there to win souls and get people to know about God through the music that you do, then do that. But you can't play both sides. So right now we're going to take a break as we continue. Yes, it may not be what you want to hear from the Beatmaker today, but it's all about gospel hip hop.
Icon Radio, keep it locked. Your number one entertainment plug. You're here?
Know about God through the music.
Genius Records.
Good evening, judges. My music will blow your mind off. Muziki wangu itapasua akili zenyu. Shilingi ya Kenya itakuzungusha. Shilingi ya Kenya. Thank you.
My friend, I would give you a standing ovation if only I was deaf. But your music is pathetic. So how long again have you been singing?
I've been singing for 14 years, sir.
Get out! 14 years? No, for real. Get out. Next.
System ya Kapungala. Papa Fololo, the king of Kapungala.
Stop that music. Stop right. Let me show you how it's done.
Tell them for it. Let me show you, man. Tell you more. Yeah. Minapenda kuimba, minapenda kuenda church na kuomba ndimi nitakatakata. Minapenda kutoa, minapenda kusifu, minapenda kuenda church na kuomba ndimi nitakatakata.
This is Icon Radio.
Oh na na, na 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 na. Yes man. See me I say, see me I say, see me I say.
Homeboys Productions, nah.
Ayo, Alex.
She's a righteous girl, bring upon them righteous man. With no conscious plan, she make them like the Alcious pan. She's a seducer, a Christian man accuser. All time she's a bruiser, and all she want is you, sir. All the pastors, all the worst time ushers and interpreters, anointed intercessors, and all the preachers, them all she want is killers. Clinch upon Jesus and cleanse up all your bishops. Let Jesus save you before she saves you. Delilah, let Jesus save you before she saves you. Delilah, ananyoa, Garad, ananyoa. She's a shaver, Delilah's shaver. Disaster always, in all ways. Be so clever, Delilah's clever. Different from her ways, always. She's a baba girl, Delilah's baba girl. All the altar man, ya Bible not to leave. Upon the dungeon, she drugs and swallow champions. Different me got the carrion, resting from medallion. Let Jesus save you before she saves you. Delilah, let Jesus save you before she saves you. So clever, Delilah's clever.
Smooth and clean, she'll give you a shave. Delilah, smooth and clean, she cuddle your dreams. Delilah,
Ananyoa, Garad, ananyoa. Let Jesus save you before she saves you. Delilah, let Jesus save you before she saves you.
Yes man, you heard it from the general one more time. Delilah is not a girl, is not a man. Delilah is anyone who is after your dreams, your vision, who is there to save them. That's a Delilah in your life, and that's the person you need to get out of your life. You see me?
Before she saves you.
Jamani inaniuma mimi nikikumbuka Pamela niliyemjua, sasa yeye huwaeleweki. Sunday school tulishinda pamoja, shuleni tulikuwa kwa CU mpaka wakati tulimaliza shule, ndipo hapo tukapoteleana. Alinifanya nimjue Mungu, juni yeye alinihubiria, mara yeye akaanza kuwaka kanisani akapotea. Sasa yeye wanalewa mtaroni pia nalala, polisi wamemshika pia wao hata wamechoka. Pamela njoo kwa Mungu, bado anakupenda. Ni nini kilichokufanya kwake Mungu we uhepe?
Tulienda shule pamoja naongea na Pamela. Tulienda kanisa pamoja I'm speaking to Pamela.
Pamela njoo kwa Mungu, bado anakupenda. Ni nini unachotafuta kwake Mungu wezi pata?
Tulimjua Mungu pamoja they wanna knew nini tena, maisha hivi hivi, they wanna knew nini tena, kulewa hivi hivi, they wanna knew. I remember we used to go to church with that girl, they wanna knew. Nakumbuka akisema ndoto zake that girl, they wanna knew nini tena, maisha hivi hivi, they wanna knew nini tena, kulewa hivi hivi, they wanna knew. Pamela, they wanna knew.
Pamela njoo kwa Mungu, bado anakupenda. Ni nini kilichokufanya kwake Mungu we uhepe?
Tulienda shule pamoja naongea na Pamela. Tulienda kanisa pamoja I'm speaking to Pamela.
Pamela njoo kwa Mungu, bado anakupenda. Ni nini unachotafuta kwake Mungu wezi pata?
Tulimjua Mungu pamoja uko wapi Pamela? Usiepe njoo kwa Yesu I'm speaking to Pamela.
Kanisani wanakuhitaji,
ulikuwa maana ukitaka maofu kuepukana.
kwa Yesu anakuhitaji, kanisani wanakuhitaji,
ulikuwa maana ukitaka maofu kuepukana.
njoo kwa Mungu anakuhitaji. Pamela njoo kwa Mungu, bado anakupenda. Ni nini kilichokufanya kwake Mungu we uhepe?
Tulienda shule pamoja naongea na Pamela. Tulienda kanisa pamoja I'm speaking to Pamela.
Pamela njoo kwa Mungu, bado anakupenda. Ni nini unachotafuta kwake Mungu wezi pata?
Tulimjua Mungu pamoja uko wapi Pamela? Usiepe njoo kwa Yesu I'm speaking to Pamela.
Kwake Mungu wezi pata.
Tulimjua Mungu pamoja uko wapi Pamela? Usiepe njoo kwa Yesu I'm speaking to Pamela.
Awalia mwancha ndanya kana kushibana shino ati ndenya kusia muigulu lakini muigulu ivule shortcut. Buli mundu you just have to follow the right route if you are to make it. Wanga papa benyanga, wanga mama benyanga, khatabana benyanga, wanga papa benyanga, wanga mama benyanga, khatabana benyanga.
Me have to say that I just really love God. Whenever I think about him, me just praise him. Because I know just merciful and wonderful for them. And me say that is available. He said the son Jesus Christ to the for me sin. Me have to say that I ain't really suffer. This a man who no sacrifice all he had. For me and you again. Me have to say that me just ready to no cry. When I not think about it, me know well. I just call you brother and sister. We got to come together, then I listen what it say. Me have to say this is a man who can walk on the water. Jesus Christ will not die for you and me. Me have to say that is the only thing. Me have to say that I'm gonna just love it till the end.
Wanga papa benyanga, wanga mama benyanga, khatabana benyanga, wanga papa benyanga, wanga mama benyanga, khatabana benyanga.
But this is according to the doctor, you are better than the rest. Like Tina Turner say you're simply the best. Me love how you bless, me love all your ways. Me put you to the test and you are just the best. According to the doctor, you are better than the rest. Like Tina Turner say you're simply the best. Me love how you bless, me love all your ways. Me put you don't know what to say. Everything you do is good. Make me strong like Samson. Give me wisdom like the one Solomon. Every time me have to say me call you. I'm gonna need a human, I just think about you. They believe that Jesus Christ left him missing. I'm think about an me shout an amen. I'll never regret what decision me take. Because when I say that you know just said that for me and you.
Cause he watches over all. It's like I hit the gym, I feel stronger than before. Energized by the divine, I'm in awe. Defined and designed by him, that's who I are. It's never complicated, my fate is integrated with his. You know we made it even though he was hated, forgive. That's what he did. He set an example when his love will give you peace like a check in the bank. This money there, it's worth your time, right? So listen up as I get my rhymes right. Back online like a clothing line, right? We just hanging, we're cool and get the vibes right. I done walked through the on the roots, on the pain, seen good, seen evil. Felt like I got more issues than my equals. Seasons, episodes, series and sequels. Lost my ground for a moment or two, but I still got hope for a moment with you. So I hit back strong cause of so let go. Gospel shoes on, trailblazing stilettos. Speaking God's truth from the suburbs to the ghetto. Strong faith making puppets talk like Chevetto.
One on the farm in the he's on. Check it. These rhymes are designed to open your opticals. So ill they threw me in the hip-hop hospital. A kingdom writer. Go read my article on how to get set to win souls and multiples. Stay strong, pick the cross and carry on. And follow God straight to the place where we belong. He's the reason why I survived all the storms and brought the ship home. I salute the dawn. Study the Bible's pages. My rock of ages says, stand up, be strong and courageous. Then speak to the streets over beats cause you can. I got you, son. I'll take you by the hand. Yeah.
See, I'm the kind of girl who stares at the beast. Dead in the iron, dares into his. Unfamiliar with red lights, the doors that won't open. I've been knocked down, but my spirit's not broken. For real, I got a permanent smile. Coming out on top is my signature style. I thrive under pressure, love in the face of danger. Bring it on, sweetie, no retreat, no surrender. Baby boo, this is how we do when we know who we is. Make peace and be cool. Yeah. Keep the chin high and build my shaka songa. You only can make me stronger.
Still walking the path. I'm still born twice. Yep, I still believe that Christ is life. I'm still read the 66 book for answers. Still believe the pure can cure the cancer. Still on a journey to my destiny. Still fall to my knees when it's hard to see. I still stand still. I still chill. Still trying to keep it 100% real. I'm still just a messenger bringing the truth. I'm still trying to make them understand the youth. I'm still A-star, the light that leads to the cross, to the
Holy Dave is the name, hip hop is a game. When I grace the mic, things will never be the same. Lame folks take my kindness for weakness, but I'm a Christian, I rejoice in my weakness. I'm a Giuliani, no biceps to win. All I need is 5 stones and a sling. Ingia na Goliath when you ring. Spiritual giants only need one swing. You're weak, usinyamaze bonga. In your weakness, Jesus will make us stronger. Steady, comebacks are ever ready. When you feel weak, say you go ever ready.
The rock and the evidence of everything that's strong. The capstone rejected said he didn't belong. Nailed on the cross, yet it's me who was wrong. The least I can do is give him praise up in this song. Original the man and now you heard the Christ is real. He's amazing and everything that he does is so surreal. Live the win instead of all gasping or water chill. To me, for real, Christ is the real deal. You can testify as you listen to this man skill. Just stand still, let the rhythm speak some real, baby. I want to thrill, it's Christ that we feel. We pledge allegiance to God and to follow his will. So stand stronger and fight harder. Hold on a bit longer so you can go farther, man. He's my father, my friend, and my brother. What more could I want? He's better than any other. There you have it, baby. Gospel's finest. It's the gospel cycle. Brought to you by the one and only Nashville, Tennessee. 105 in the house, baby. I see you. Loadwood Records. Salute to the king. Uses
Sasa hii gospel imeshika, wengine wameanza kusema ikuwe Mogidhi, wengine wanasema ikuwe hip hop, wengine wanasema hip hop ikuwe Mogidhi, wengine wanasema nani. Mimi nasema kama umeokoka na umevaa soksi bila kiatu, washana naye.
Leta mambo.
Kila mtu anisi, cause ni me as you see, ready kwa pojumbe ndani ya wawa yote sawa, usiwe mstinji ukiwa na mali gawa, history na reshinda Michael Power ni ya Mungu wa vyote, hata kuna hawa sasa nimekosa hata vile nitaji express, jini love yake menitoa kila stress, cheki maisha yangu yote iko blessed, when ni ajo umeokoka, cheki maisha yangu yote iko blessed, when ni ajo umeokoka. Looking at the window, all is at a pillow like they're watching Philo, waiting for relief like them in know. But more than I know, me know Jesus is a hero. This goes to the people looking at the window, all is at a pillow like they're watching Philo, waiting for relief like them in know. But more than I know, me know Jesus is a hero. Hey, come me like a lamb who suspects her. You like me not just like to race her. In a this situation, me not get now. You know, many times me can't satisfy. You know, many times me can't get now. You know, many times me call Jesus. Jog see Mr. Blue. You are glorified. Jog see
Greetings.
Yo, you're listening to the Vault on Icon Radio. Keep it locked. Your number one entertainment plug. You hear?
Yeah. We're back like we never left at all. You know we didn't leave. It's the beat maker, not the beat taker. 10 fingers in the air. And if you don't know, hey, you better ask your mama or ask a Kinyi with the good hair. So today, before we went for the break, we're playing some of the newbies gospel. I call them newbies because, some people call me a dinosaur because I was there back in the days, when this whole thing was starting out. And some of these guys came later, much later on. Then the second phase said, I can't go on with the show without playing some of the guys who came or doing gospel later. I mean, before that also. Well, some of the names we played today is like we played just Wacha, hey? That's Jog C. Now I know Jog C quite well because that was Lena, that was New Vine and the late Cabrera, And yeah, we miss you. We think about you, Cabrera. Awesome artists, and all three of them awesome artists together. On the time my group, Zao Community, is coming to an end, that's when their career were beginning in gospel music, from what I remember. And also on that record, they had SK Blue. I also remember when SK Blue was coming up. There was a lot of talk about this great artist was coming up. Called SK Blue. So it was good they did a record together. We also played Stronger. Stronger was more like a cipher, from what I can say, So there's Nashville featuring A-Star. There was Holy Dave, there's Linda, Advocate, Michelle, MC. Of course, we can't forget MCLC was in my crew. So that's LC was on that. And Sham, it was a good cipher that came together and put together. Then, of course, we also played Rough Tone. Mwikulu, you can't forget about Mwikulu. Now, it isn't enough, because we're talking about gospel, hip-hop, and gospel music. I know Rough Tone. Rough Tone is one of those dinosaurs also, man. Like I knew Rough Tone when he was actually working on this album. If I'm not wrong, it was Rough Tone and RK. And I remember even where they're recording the album. I'm not going to tell you where they're recording the album right now, but I used to pass around and see them recording their album. But that's Rough Tone. Now, interesting enough, Rough Tone is a good way to look, because Rough Tone was actually a secular artist before, then became gospel, And then we hear about him doing this album actually did very well because he was doing it in his mother tongue, and it opened up a lot of doorways from him. Of course, later on we hear about his record label Lampstand Records, So Rough Tone is right now. I haven't heard Rough Tone do a record for ages because people say he went a different direction, became like an ambassador. So we don't know if there's anything, if he's gonna bring anything more. And around the same time, because Rough Tone was doing dancehall, but gospel. And I remember when I listened to this record of his, there's a part where it goes, yeah, like that in the record. And it makes me remember this dancehall Jamaican artist. That's Papa San. Papa San had this song called, it's like he's crying through the whole record. It's like, I can't take it no more. No. And he's crying. It's like a woman, And it was a really good record. So when I hear Rough Tone reminds me, some elements of it remind me of Papa San. Papa San became a gospel artist. I don't know if a lot of people remember this, but he actually gave his life to God, So this is quite interesting. Then, of course, we played Ringtone featuring SK Blue. Man, I just had to play this record. Literally, I had to play it. Pamela. I don't know why he used that name specifically, Pamela, or if you're in America, say Pamela. But yeah, but it's in Africa, say Pamela. Joe kwa Yesu. All I can remember about this track was those are the days of heavy auto-tune. Like, to a point, ringtone almost sounds like he's being strangled by that by that auto-tune. But maybe that was a style at that point. Anyway, we also played Hope Kid, Delilah, and he says Delilah is not really about a woman. It's about also people in life trying to hold you down, So I remember this record. Then there was, of course, my friend, great artist, Henry Mutuko and Rough Tone. They did this record, Usichoke. And I think it was a really excellent record. You hear Henry going in her kamba vocals over there, bringing it out, So it was a great record, of course, produced by RK, And it was great hearing them come together and actually work on this record together. So Usichoke had a very good message behind it. Interestingly enough, we actually did have, people thought that Henry actually, because Henry, she won a Cora Award, then people said they didn't hear about her for a long time. Interestingly enough, Henry came on an interview here on Icon Radio, So if you want to know her story, you can always go on Icon Radio K and check the interview and see what she was saying and all the journey, what's happened in her life. Trust me, it's a great story when you hear about what happened. That interview was done by me, the Beatmekah, and of course Myra, who put it out there. So go and check it out on Icon Radio, and you get to hear the whole interview. We had to play one of the GOATs, the greatest of all time, the OGs. We had to play their record today, and that was Heart Ministry. Of course, that was that song, Show You Love. Show you love. That was the record. When it begins, you hear, hey, 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 hey. That's actually Ted Josiah, by the way, in case you guys don't know. That record, I think, came out around 93 or 94, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, I think it was 94. Yeah, it came out in 94, And, of course, you hear Esther, who's there. There's Salio Yugi, the late Salio Yugi. There's Ted Josiah, of course. The main man himself, Pete Ordero. Nowadays he tells me, don't just call me Pete, call me. In fact, he says with his low voice, he says, call me Rev, because nowadays it's Reverend Pete Ordera. Yeah. So that was a great record. I remember when it came out, I was like still in high school, and it was that season of that deep R&B, the one that just touches your soul, touches your heart. You just find your head, you close your eyes, you ain't saying much, but you're rocking your head from side to side. That was Show You Love, and it was an awesome record. And lastly, we played Daddy-O, and of course, people know Daddy-O because that's Rough Tone's younger brother. And with System, yeah, Kapungala. I don't know, had that pop, that rumba kind of lingala kind of effect on it. It was a great record. One thing that you hear with most of these guys from that era was when they were doing gospel music, the message is very straightforward, by the way. It was straight to the point. I feel, and that's what I'm getting. That's one thing that's lacking right now when you hear gospel hip-hop, you hear gospel rap. That element, like I said, the thing is, where is gospel hip-hop right now? With gospel rap? Where is it really going? What has really made it great? What has really changed? But one thing I'll tell you is, one thing that constantly comes up, and this is not just through me, a question that was posed is, why does it feel like gospel hip-hop has lost its way? Because a lot of guys have said that gospel hip-hop has generally lost his way. It's not what it used to be. Now, when we talk about some of the MCs that were back in the days, even female rappers, I said like MCLC. Of course, there was a late Rahab who passed recently, who was in the group Sita. When we go back, before that time, there was even a group that came from Nairobi Pentecost Church, from Fortress. There was a group called Victory, and there was a young lady there at that time called Achieng. There were a lot of, you hear a lot of gospel rap coming out at that time, but I feel the message is always straight to the point. And if it's about God, it's not just about rapping about God, It's like, what else are you going to show apart from just saying, hey, Jesus is King, Jesus is Lord? What else are you going to say, And one of the things is why gospel, I feel, has lost its way is what we call the money problem. and it's a huge problem for gospel artists, you know, and it pushes them to become secular artists. One of the problems is gospel artists are paid way less. If they're paid way less than actually secular artists, you know, and a lot of them claim that it's hard for them to make a living because they can't really, they look at music as a talent and you should be able to benefit from your talent. That's where they look at it as gospel artists. So if I'm not making any paper out there, then what do? Let me go to secular music, where at least I know they, at least in quotes, and I say this in quotes, they feel they can receive a steady income. You know, whether that is true or not true comes down to the individual, you know. Like if we give an example of Bahati, you know, Bahati, as we know, was a gospel artist for a minute, for some time, you know, that turned secular, you know, in his sound, you know, and he even had a record label that he had set up, you know, and he went secular, and argument is that he feels that he made more music doing love songs, not love songs for God, but generally love songs, romantic songs, you know, and that's what he felt he was growing. Another person that's been talked about a lot in the industry is DJ Mo. You know, they felt like, okay, this guy was a golf DJ, but where is he really going? What is it really substantial with him? Like, we don't know where to place him, you know? So there's been that argument. That's why we come back and say, is gospel and the gospel artists and the gospel artists, is it really relevant in 2026? And I'm posing that question to you. You can give me your opinion about what you think. A lot of artists, why they also turn secular who are gospel, is because the recognition that they're looking for comes a bit too late for them, you know, or goes to the wrong people, you know. Good example, once again, was Willie Paul. Willie Paul was doing gospel music. It was about God. Then he felt like, no, forget about this, man. I ain't growing the way I need to grow, so let me go secular. But recently, he made a statement that he wants to come back into gospel. So it makes me ask a question. Why are you coming back to gospel? Is it about the music, or is it about ministry? Is it about reaching souls for God? You got to have that diversity. You can't just be like, yo, I'm doing this because it's a great genre, and I think I can, with my cloud, I can make some money over there. You know, so there's a lot of people who look out there and be like, you're doing it for the wrong reason. And that's another reason why gospel music has come down. Now, I'm not saying that everyone in gospel music is going a certain direction where they're compromising, but it's a question that people have to ask. People are listening to the music, the people who tune in to what you're doing, they have to ask that question. You can't avoid them asking that question, you know. Also, there, of course, like people like DJ Mo, there's been a lot of scandals, you know, about him, you know, and about the life that he lives, you know. And one of the whole thing about gospel music and just being a Christian is you got to live your life the right way. If you're not living your life the right way, there's always going to be cynics out there who have something to say, you know. So, also another thing why there seems to be a downfall in gospel hip-hop and gospel rap music and gospel music in general is the line between gospel and secular has been blurred a lot. It's not very clear. I was talking to someone yesterday, and I was actually telling him that when it comes to gospel music and working with secular artists, if you're gospel and you do, let's say you're out there, you say, hey, I'm ministering gospel music through hip hop, I feel like I told the person there is no line right now. There is no line. And he's like, he's like, I agree with you on some things, but I don't agree on others. And I said, okay, you tell me what you think. And the person said he's been approached as a gospel rapper. He's been approached by secular rappers, but he only works with them based on how he feels their life is. Even though you're doing secular and you want to get him on a record, he looks at your life, first of all, and says, hey, do I want to get on a record with this guy? Does it seem like that I really want to? It's like, he feels like, if he feels the artist has something positive that they're saying, even though they're secular artists, then he wouldn't mind, you know? So the line, that's why I say there is no line. You know, modern gospel hip-hop has borrowed a lot heavily from secular hip-hop. Let's just call it for what it is. That's what's happened a lot of times. And so where gospel music is so caught up on trends, Um, Even in the churches, it's not the way church used to be back in the days. Church was very direct and had a direct pattern of how they wanted things done. But now the church is all about entertainment. Yo, the pastors are about entertainment. We've seen a lot of story about pastors. I'm not here to talk about them today. That's at another time. But there's been a lot of stories about pastors even compromising and really doing their own things that have been shady also. So there's been a line. That line, that's why I'm saying there is no line, because the churches now, they just want people to entertain. It's no longer about God. They'll speak about God, but really they're saying, hey, like that song, that rock song, about entertaining, can you entertain us? So that's exactly how music has become in the gospel sector. And so the line has really been blurred. It's kind of like you're trying to put on these glasses to see, but all you're seeing, you can't see clearly. You can't see the person in front of you. You can't see the building in front of you. All you can see is just a formation of something. And that's how gospel music in a lot of people's views has become. It's just become a formation, which is really sad when I look at it from that point of view, And funny enough, a lot of times when you sit down and you talk with these artists and you get to hear where they're coming from, some of them have deep stories of things that have happened in their past, and they say, hey, I want to change my music because of this, And once again, it still comes down to financial. Financial plays a big part. It doesn't matter whether you're gospel or whether you're secular. It plays a big part on how you move. Like I said, there's secular artists at one point who became gospel artists because they said, it looks like gospel's making some cheddar out there, it's making some good money, so let me become a gospel artist. Yeah, But I currently think, and this is my view. This is the point that I want to wind up with and say. I feel that, like I said, there's a lot of talented rappers out there. There's a lot of gospel singers that are talented out there. But you got to ask yourself, why are you in it for? Why did you put yourself in that position? Why are you doing that kind of music? Who is it for? Is it for your pocket? Or is it for God? Who is it really for that you're doing it for? And you've got to ask yourself that question time and over again. And that's why I said, there's that verse in the Bible that says, do not be deceived, God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, he shall reap. People think that they can get away with things and they think, because I've gone away with it, I'll be fine. But God is just giving you your time and checking out and seeing how you are, and the truth will come out. Sometimes when the truth comes out for several artists that I know, it ends up being in a position where it hurts them. Now, I remember back in the days, I met these two artists. They were in two different groups. Two totally different groups. They did two different kinds of music. One of them was Vinny Banton. Vinny Banton was in this group called Season Sako. Now, let me give you a bit about the story about Season Sako. That was Vinny and a guy called Robert. Right? Now, Robert, apart from being, Vinny used to do the dancehall, raga kind of stuff. And then Robert used to sing. That was his thing. But Robert was also a fashion designer, so he used to design the fashion and clothes, how they go and perform on stage. That was his thing. At one point in the group, I was introduced to them, and they came to record at a studio I was working in. I think that was probably around 98, 99, around there in Madaraka, And they were working on their record. All of a sudden, one day, Robert shows up. And he says, hey, from today, I can't be with you, Vinny. Yeah, it's like I've given my life to God, and because you're not saved, we cannot be together. We cannot sing together anymore. We're friends, we cannot sing together. So he left. That time, Mr. Googs was also there. He was in a rap group called Rapper Freak. One day I'll bring them in. Some of them guys like Kim, and they'll get to give you their story of what happened. By the way, he was a great songwriter. He's written for some of the top groups that you probably know about that came out of Kenya. Guys even like Sema he worked with, you know. So one day we'll bring him in to give his story here on The Vault. But what happened to Rapper Freak, there were like 3 of them. But I remember, though they denied his story, but Googs always used to show up late to this. He was the latest guy ever in the studio. He was always late, you know. It reached a point they got tired. They're like, yo, you got to go. Us were here on time. You are the one who was late. So he left the group. So remember, Vinny Roba has left. He says he's gone gospel. Fuck, he formed another a cappella group with some other guys. Roba, that is. Googs is no longer the Rapper Freak. So he said, why don't we team up? Vinny said, why don't we team up? Googs is like, cool. So guess what? They go to Ogopa and remove this song. Wase Tumetoka Gedurai. That's when you hear that record come out. That's the time Ogopa was really rising up and producing a lot of artists. And people forget, some of the artists that came even there were gospel originally. Wahoo was a gospel artist originally. Amani was in a girl group. People don't realize it, but I was actually her first producer. Amani was in a group called Sobriety. Was doing gospel. Went to Ogopa, became a secular artist. You know, so Vinny Banton and Googs, they did the record. Shortly after that, some years later, Googs gives his life to Christ. And doesn't just become a gospel artist, but he becomes a pastor. Me, the way I remember him, he was known as Googs, but we used to call him by his other name, Mofa, you know? And so, move forward down the line years later. Recently, I was speaking with Vinny. Vinny is also a gospel artist and a born-again Christian. And he has a lot to say about the gospel move. One day, bringing him and he'll give his side of the story. But now there's a story of Googs and Vinny Banton coming together and doing a few shows together and doing a few records together. That we're waiting to see. But when you do, and Googs and Vinny, you drop your record, come to Icon Radio, on The Vault, and we'll be proud to give your story out there and hear your music that you're doing. So my final thing is that gospel music, you as a viewership decide, do you feel that gospel music has lost its way? Do you feel that people are more into making the money than actually doing it for the right reasons, you know? And are there gospel artists that you really feel that are doing it the right way? You know, if you're doing it the right way, then that's great. For me, as Jimmy the Beatmekah, God has always been a big part of my life and still is till today. And everything I do is based around a decision of how am I doing it? Am I doing it the right way? I don't just believe in doing things for the sake of doing things. When I work with artists, I believe in, at the end of the day, why am I even working with that artist? Is there a reason why I'm even messing around with them to help them put out their records, you know? So it was great talking to you today about gospel music. There's so many stories I can tell that I haven't told today. If I start telling them, we'll never finish, you know, because there's too much to talk about. But you new school guys who are putting out the gospel hip hop and you're doing it right, man, shout out to you guys. Keep on doing your thing. Do it, first of all, for God, you know. Before you think about the money, think about those other things, do it for God. It's been a blessing time having you guys here today on The Vault. You know, it's hip-hop all the way. And we represent Kenyan hip-hop all the way. So shout out. You know, stay blessed. Keep on doing your thing. Enjoy your week. It's The Beatmekah, and I'm out.